If Lost has 1,000,000 fans, then I'm one of them. If Lost has 10 fans, then I'm one of them. If Lost only has 1 fan, then that is me. If Lost has no fans, then that means I am no longer on Earth. If the world is against Lost, then I am against the world. Spoilers for Lost ahead, you've been warned. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of the TV show Lost, and if you're watching this, it probably means you're a big fan of Lost as well, or at least know of it. For some reason, the show has garnered a reputation of jumping the shark towards the end of its run. However, I think the ending is perfect and very misunderstood. No, they were not dead the whole time. Why does everyone think that? But that's a video for another time. Today, I want to talk about the greatest scene in the whole series, and possibly the greatest scene in television history. Lost is a perfect example of serialized television. Serial television is a program that has a continuing plot that unfolds over the series in an episode-by-episode fashion. The key to viewership in a serial television program is keeping the main story hidden and only revealing elements through each episode, usually at the end of the episode in a cliffhanger so that the audience tunes in next week. Nearly every drama you see on television goes by this format, and I think Lost is the best example at employing these tactics since there is so much mystery and intrigue around the show. Meaning, every time you finish an episode, it makes you want to start the next one as soon as possible to see what will happen next. However, one thing that Lost does a lot better than other serialized television is managing to tell complete stories over episodes and seasons, while still continuing the overall plot through the entire show. Each episode and season will have an arc that ties up the story beats and character arcs, but it doesn't fully solve every question or plot thread, so that the story can continue into the next season. Take Season 2 of Lost, for example. This season largely focuses around the mystery of the hatch, and by the end of the season we are given answers on what the purpose and lore behind it is. But we are also given more questions about the Dharma Initiative as a whole. Same goes for the others in Season 2. We tie up plot threads which have been running the entire season with Henry Gale, but we are also introduced to a whole new world and the next part of the ongoing story. Not only is Lost great at managing the story arcs in this way, but also the character arcs. And this is apparent with the main character of the series, Jack Shephard. Jack has several different character arcs throughout the series, ranging from small changes in his personality to life-changing arcs that alter his perception of the world. These happen in 3 different categories: his episode arcs, his season arcs, and his series arcs. For example, he has a character arc in a single episode in Season 1, Episode 5, White Rabbit. In this episode, his struggle and arc is largely external and against nature, as his goal is to find fresh water for the camp. This contrasts greatly with his character arc throughout the entire series, which comes to a head in the series finale, Season 6, Episode 17, The End. This arc is an internal struggle of learning to transition from a man of science to a man of faith. However, the scene I wanted to examine is integral to his Season 1 arc, and this arc comes into fruition in the season finale titled Exodus. This scene involves 2 of our main characters, Jack, of course, and another character, Sawyer. In order to analyze this scene, I want to set the stage with some context. Throughout the first season of Lost, we've learned a lot of our main protagonist, Jack Shephard. Before his plane crashed on the island, he was a talented doctor who had always had the insistent need to fix everything. After he ends up on the island, he is thrust into a leadership role by the other survivors, and his need to fix things continues. Jack has always had a strained relationship with his father. His father, Christian, was a doctor as well, and an alcoholic. One day he is fired for being drunk on the job, with Jack being the one who got him fired for it. While his father is on a bender in Australia, Jack goes to the country to find him, but discovers he has unfortunately passed. Jack makes preparations for his funeral back in the United States, but they never make it because their plane crashes on the mysterious island. Additionally, Christian's body mysteriously disappears, and Jack sees visions of his father on the island. Due to these reasons, Jack never really got closure with his father, and they never had the chance to patch up their rocky relationship before his death. Jack believes that his father died hating him because Jack got him fired. Jack feels responsible for his father's death. This is something that weighs on Jack greatly while he acts as the leader on the island. For the most part, Jack is a pretty good leader. He inspires his followers, he is always making sure that they are safe and healthy, and he deals with threats and problems that the survivor camp runs into. For a couple of the early episodes, one of those problems happens to be another survivor. a man by the name of Sawyer. Before they crashed on the island, Sawyer was a con man in the real world. He tragically followed in the footsteps of the man who got his mother and father killed by conning them out of their money. From that day on, Sawyer was on a revenge quest to kill the man, which eventually led him to Australia. While in Australia, Sawyer happens to run into Christian Shepherd in a bar, and the two have a conversation. In this conversation, Christian tells Sawyer about how he's so proud of his son and that his son is a better man than he'll ever be. He feels gratitude and pride for what his son did to him, what his son did for him. He mentions how if he had the guts to call up his son and tell him that he would, but he's too weak. During this conversation, he says his personal saying.
That's why the Red Sox will never win the damn series.
In the early episodes, Sawyer acted as sort of an anti-hero, being an obstacle for Jack and other survivors to overcome. Sawyer had a rough personality and an every-man-for-himself mentality that caused him to butt heads with the other survivors, and particularly Jack. However, as the season goes on and these characters grow, Sawyer learns to be less selfish when he helps the other survivors build a raft. Although it starts out with selfish interests, just so he can get off the island, during the finale when a crucial piece of the raft breaks, Sawyer single-handedly goes and gets a new one. This is when Sawyer and Jack have their discussion. We see Jack and Sawyer try to mend their relationship a little bit in this scene. Jack offers Sawyer a gun and wishes him luck on the raft. There's an unspoken feeling this could likely be the last time they see each other, as they are uncertain if the raft will get them rescued or get Sawyer killed. Earlier in the season, Jack said the same line that Christian said to Sawyer.
That's why the Sox will never win the series.
Sawyer made the connection between the two, but he never told Jack. Now, as they are parting ways, Sawyer feels the need to tell Jack about what Christian said to him. As Jack is walking away, Sawyer finally decides to speak up and tell Jack about the time he ran into his father in Sydney. When he calls out to Jack, he uses his real name, rather than Doc or any other nickname he commonly uses. Right off the bat, there's a level of sincerity that Jack is not accustomed to with Sawyer. Sawyer tells Jack the story of when he met his father. He says that Christian knew that their falling out was his own fault and that his son was probably thinking the same thing about himself. Sawyer says the line,
See, kids are like dogs. You knock them around enough, they'll think they did something to deserve it.
When he finally mentions Christian's name and all the things he said to Jack, that is when Jack finally breaks down and looks away from Sawyer, scared to show emotion. Sawyer consoles Jack in his own way. The line,
Something tells me he never got around to making that call.
brings the emotional moment to a climax. This is the closure that Jack has been looking for ever since his father's death, and is delivered to him by the man who he's been at odds with since they crashed on the island. The fact that it's Sawyer that is the one to tell Jack this makes it hit so much harder. This aspect of Jack's character has always affected him this entire season, and is finally getting this emotional payoff in the season finale, which makes this overall episode so much stronger. Also, the fact that this moment was teased earlier in the season, but Sawyer didn't speak up then, makes this beat hit harder now, that these characters may not ever see each other again. What makes this scene so great is it not only serves to further Jack's character arc, but also Sawyer's. This scene gives us a glimpse into Sawyer's character a bit more and foreshadows the character growth that he will have in the later seasons. In this scene, we get a small glimpse that Sawyer cares about those in his life, and although he puts on a tough persona, he has a lot of love to give. This is shown more in Season 5 when his walls are broken down by Julia and they start their own little life together in Dharmaville. Additionally, these emotions from Jack's father are being delivered by Sawyer, the man who lost his father and mother when he was just a child. It's painfully ironic. He's giving the closure to this father and son because he could never get it himself. The acting in the scene is also what cements it as one of the greatest in television history. The emotions are subdued but realistic. Jack is not breaking down sobbing, he is trying to stop his tears and gain his composure. It tracks on how we've seen these characters handle their emotion in the series so far. Another factor that makes this scene so well crafted is the sound design and score. The score for the whole series was done by Michael Giacchino, who is one of the best composers working in the industry right now. For the first half of the scene, there's no music, with just natural sounds of the jungle. First note that is played in the score happens when Sawyer's nearly halfway through his story and finally mentions the man's name, Christian. When Sawyer drops the bomb about how Christian is sorry and that Jack is a great man, then the score picks up. The strings come in and it swells in emotion. Saving the music to come in right at this exact moment makes this emotional punch deliver so much better since it's been built up the entire scene. Let's also analyze the cinematography in this scene and how it contributes to the overall emotion. When the scene first starts out, it is mostly shot with mediums, shooting the characters from waist up. It continues like this until Sawyer begins the story of Jack's dad. As his story starts, the shots start to become more zoomed in and personal, with close-ups of the character faces. In the shot reverse shot, we get shots of Jack all by himself, but when there's shots of Sawyer, we can see that Jack's shoulder is still in the composition. This is done so even when the shot is not directly on Jack, he is still included within the frame, because after all, this scene is meant to further his character arc. There is also a small but great bit with the blocking of the characters when Jack starts to break down. He turns his body away from Sawyer, trying to hide his emotion, but Sawyer continues to look at Jack, even though Jack is not looking back. Sawyer needs Jack to hear these words, and he's making sure that they sink in. All of these contributing factors are what make this scene a masterpiece, and what I think is one of the greatest scenes in TV history. As a Lost fan, this scene always makes me choke up and is truly one of the best scenes in the series. I often wish I could erase all my memories of the show just so I could watch it again for the first time. So, that's my analysis of this scene. What's your favorite scene in TV history? What scene should I analyze next? This has been Tom from Eisenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. See you next week.